I'm Shane Nyland, and my co host is Blake Musser. And these stories you're about to hear are from Weapons Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, 1st Marine Division, about the events surrounding and directly from the mouths of the people who were in Ramadi 2004. Cool, man. You need very little introduction, but go ahead and tell everybody who you are.
My name is Reagan Charles Hodges the First, also known as the Magnificent Bastard.
What was your
How you guys doing?
What was your rank in 2004, and what platoon were you with?
My rank kind of varied. I went all across the board, like a 2 or 3 time. I was a 3-time Lance Corporal, 2-time Corporal. I got out as a sergeant, but I didn't pick that up until basically I was almost out. I was in Weapons Company 81 platoon.
And you were with Rainmaker, yeah?
Yes.
Nice, man. And what rank were you in when we went to Ramadi?
So I got busted down for getting in all that trouble, the fights and stuff before. Right. I mean, right before we left, I got busted down and I was a Lance. So when we went over there, I had corporals under me. Calderon, Laylong picked up corporal and I'm a Lance, So they got meritoriously promoted pretty quick out of it. That was a good thing. But that's so we went over there. I was a Lance Corporal.
Nice. Yeah, you talk about it a little bit. What do you remember of the workup before we left?
I remember the training was pretty crazy. It wasn't crazy. It was good training. The craziest part to me was, and what I remember most is knowing we're about to go to Iraq. We're getting all these young kids. We're getting all these boot drive. We ended up getting a lot while we were, just weeks before leaving, didn't we? I'm pretty sure we did.
Yeah, we got one like right before.
I remember having to go to court a lot. Lieutenant Dobb having to take me to, because I spent 2 weeks in jail before we ended up getting to go. So we got real acquainted that way. Staff Sergeant Cook and them having to take me to court a couple times, making me get dressed up in my uniform. But as far as the training goes, I remember where'd we go? We went to that Air Force base. We did some training with the what special force? It was who was that we did the training with?
There was British Special Forces.
Special Forces.
There was some Scottish as well, but mostly the Brits.
But, the training, I always liked. I like doing the mount with Gunny Merarkey and a lot of stuff like that. I knew him when he was a sergeant back in 3-4. So we went back a ways, so I always loved that guy. I thought the training was decent. I thought we could have ramped it up a little bit more, but we didn't have a lot of time. I was always about the training in the field. I was not much of a garrison Marine. I was a libo risk, So I always felt like I did better in the field. As far as that goes. But I did have to miss some field training because of my court dates and stuff. So,
well, it's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned that. What I imagine, I don't really need to know the details of your arrest and everything else. I don't think that matters, to be quite honest. If you want to tell it, tell it.
No, go ahead.
But I am very interested in your relationship with the command surrounding this, because this easily could have just been like, fuck this guy and we'll kick him out. But they didn't do that. So I'm curious how that worked out.
So it's a crazy story, man. So I got into a couple of fights when I was told to stay away from some people, and I didn't. So I got in trouble. And, every time I've been NJP'd, I'm not, even one time, my chain of command, we're not really NJP'ing you for this. We're doing this because of all the stuff you get away with. That was my first enlistment, which I understand. So anytime I got in trouble, I deserved it. So I was never the guy that cried about getting NJP'd. I'm like,
sure.
I made that decision beforehand. I was going to do what I was going to do, and I was going to have to deal with the consequences. But the consequences to me didn't scare me away from doing what I wanted to do at the moment. That's just part of being stupid, I guess. But it got pretty bad there. It got to a point where on my I think my last NJP, I was getting brought in to the Sergeant Major Sergeant Major's office, which we know he is one of the greatest ass chewers that have ever. I've had him ass chew a lot by Sergeant Majors, but Sergeant Major Booker has a gift of getting in your face.
I like that you're a connoisseur of ass chewing. That's fantastic.
I mean, I can tell you all kinds of Sergeant Major stories, but he chews ass on another level. But I remember in the process of that NJP, this is how crazy it got. And this was just weeks or months before we were leaving,
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of weeks,
It was a few weeks because I remember.
It was less than a month.
I remember. Yes. Anyways, it was a few weeks.
Yeah, it was pretty tight. So, and I just remember sitting in that NJP, and like I said, Booker can really get after you. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm not going to listen to this no more, even though I should have just shut up and listened. So, to make a long story short, there was Staff Sergeant Cook was in there, Lieutenant Dobb was in there, and they were witness to it. But it ended up, the discussion ended up getting to the point where Sergeant Major Booker told me, he said, you know what, maybe I should just court martial you and we'll see if you have the balls to go outside the gate with me. And so I stood up out of my chair because I was at the position of attention, and I just sat down. And then that really made him mad. That's when he got up and come and got in my face and then said, we can go outside the gate. And I stood up and I said, we can go right now. And he just proceeded to tell me to shut up and sit back down. So I sat back down, and so I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, I felt like I was on the verge of probably getting kicked out. I don't have no idea. But he was mentioning court martial, and I was like, well, if we're going to go there, we might as well have it out, But thank God he didn't. The funny thing in that part, which if there's anything funny about it, was right after I got through losing my rank and I put on Lance Corporal. He made me put on the Lance Corporal chevrons right there. He went to go do something. I'm standing in the hall, outside of his office. He's got the door shut and everything like that. As I'm sitting out there in the hall, you just look down. I noticed that there was somebody was checking into the unit. You know how you got to wear your alphas and you're checking into a unit, all that. So I look down the hall and I see this guy walking down, checking in. And as he gets closer and closer, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Then we make eye contact, and who it was Staff Sergeant Walker from Echo Company.
Yeah.
And so we go back. When he was a boot, he was and I was one of the senior guys. He was one of my roommates back in 3-4, and I used to haze him. I used to, I like to mess with people.
Yeah.
I have a history of that. And it's just, I was the same way when I was a boot. I'd call a staff sergeant a boot and, look at me like, what? I would take whatever they're going to give. But I was just that guy for whatever stupid reason. So Walker's walking down the hall, and I notice him, and he looks at me and he's like, we just forget, the situation has changed. He's not my boot anymore. He's a staff sergeant walking down the hall, and I'm a newly demoted Lance Corporal. And for people that don't know any better, like they're in the hall, and I'm like, Walker, what's up? He's a staff sergeant. You don't talk to them like that.
Right.
He comes up and he hugs me, and he's like, dude, you're still a Lance Corporal? I said, well, I said, you're not going to believe it. But he goes, I told him, I said, I just got NJP. And he goes, when? I said, like 5 minutes ago. He goes, I think that's what was happening to you when you got out of the Marine Corps the last time I saw you. And so we just laughed, and it was a really good time. He ended up, I can say it now, but when I was on restriction, he'd come by and drink beer with me after my last sign-in, and we'd just shoot the shit about the old days. And then we would have like serious conversations about going to Iraq and being deployed and everything like that. And and those are great conversations. And lo and behold, it was a deployment he never made it home from. Right. So it hit a lot different after the fact. I appreciate those conversations with him a lot more now. But that's what was happening to me before we were going to go on that deployment. But the last thing I wanted to do was miss out on that deployment. That was what I felt like I was born to do. And that's all I was going to be good at as far as the Marine Corps goes. Like you said, I'm not necessarily the garrison type.
I think that's part of what, what started the conversation is that the command knew that about you, Hodges.
You think so?
Yeah. Oh, I know so. I mean, because you were, yes, you were, in garrison, we were all very, very concerned what was going to happen next. But even the story that you told is a great example of, and that you were bringing back a lot of very fond memories for me, because that's exactly there's a part of the story here that is true, which is no matter what happened, you were rolling with the punches. You never took the blow and sat down and was like, and now I need to give up. So, no matter what was happening, if you were stepping up and stepping in, and you were knowledgeable too. And so like I never needed to worry. I mean, we were in different, platoons over there, but we
were always
together.
We're
always, but before that, I never had to doubt whether or not you were going to do the right thing in the moment. Like if there was a fight going to happen, God damn it, I knew that Hodges was going to be the first motherfucker swinging, whether I was wrong or not. And so you knew that over there too. And so I think that's why things went the way that it did, because like you said, when you got in trouble, you never tried to make an excuse for it.
No.
I mean, you didn't want to get in trouble, and so you did whatever you could to get out, not.
Yeah, I never felt sorry for myself for getting in trouble.
Right, exactly. But you never, but once you're like, all right, you got me, like, and so I think that carries a lot of weight. I mean, even as a parent now, I mean, that's the same way with my kids. Is like, they can be the biggest shithead in the moment, but like when they're owning up to their stuff and like, all right, you're like, all right, I can start working with you, and you're not, And I think that, anyways, I'll digress.
Well, it was funny because when we had one of our reunions, and my boys, my boys are 21 now, and they're both in the Marines. One's in the Naval Academy, but he'll be going to the Marine Corps shortly here. Sergeant Major Booker, at our last reunion that we had, my enlisted Marine, Jaden, was there, and he's stationed right there at Del Mar, so that's where we're having our little beach party,
Yeah.
So he came out and he got to see a lot of people and meet a lot of people, and he heard some stories. He didn't hear a lot because growing up, I didn't really want him hearing. Some stories are okay, but we have a lot of stories that we have to keep quiet.
That's right.
Because they're just at the age they wouldn't understand,
Right.
And they got older. You always hear somebody telling a story about, I almost got in a fight with my sergeant major, and like 90% of the time they're full of shit. Like it never got to it. Well, we really did. Me and Booker almost were fucking going to blows. But Sergeant Major Booker told that story to my son, and he just looked at me like, I'm like, don't even get any ideas. Don't ever.
Yeah.
Which I don't have to worry about, for him. But yeah, it was a wild time. I had a wild time in the Marine Corps, but it was the best times of my life. And, some were the worst, losing people that our brothers and stuff like that, some of the worst, but I don't regret 1 second of any bit of trouble that I got into. I don't regret. It's just me being me, and I was never going to be I was never going to be like the Sergeant Garcia in garrison. Like he was that guy, in the field. I had my style, and it worked best for me, and it was probably just tailor-made for a situation like Ramadi. But, so be it. I took advantage of it the best that I could have, and thank God for it,
Did you end up doing any division schools prior to going over to Ramadi, or
I did squad leaders course. I did something else. I can't remember. Infantry squad leader, is that what it's called, I believe, or something like that. And then I don't remember. I didn't do anything pertaining just to Ramadi, or just to that deployment coming up to Iraq.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I said, I was in a lot of trouble back then. We were going to court for months, back and forth. They couldn't send me anywhere because, they had to yank me out of the field at that Air Force base. We were doing all the mountain training and all that stuff to go to court.
Oh, no shit.
But we did get to listen to, me and Staff Sergeant Cook got to listen to the Super Bowl on the way there because it was playing on the radio.
But I would imagine maybe we'll get lucky and we'll talk to Sergeant Major Cook, but I would imagine we'll never get his full opinion. But I'll double down on what Blake said. I know that for sure that Dobb and and Staff Sergeant Cook at the time, or Sergeant Cook or whatever he was, Staff Sergeant Cook, I guess.
Staff
Sergeant. Yeah.
Picked up Gunny in Ramadi, right?
He did.
I know they valued you, and I can remember a specific story why, and I'm gonna steal 2 minutes and tell it anyway. There was a time when your ass didn't get paid. I remember First Sergeant Lee fucked up your pay before we got First Sergeant Mac. And I remember you walking out in a pair of jeans with your hands in your pocket to formation, and you're like, well, I'm not getting paid, I'm not working.
Yeah.
And I remember laughing. I was laughing so hard I could barely stand up.
Yeah.
Because he was about as red as a Coke can. And he was screaming. And I was like, actually, that makes sense. You're like, I got my paycheck right here. It says $0. I made $0 for 30 days worth of work.
So you're getting zero amount of work out of me. Yeah.
But in that same vein, later that day, we had some newer Marines that needed to get their weapons out of the armory, and then we were going to go do some kind of gun drills. I don't know what the hell for. And you went and dressed out and taught those Marines how to go through the gun. And it was free, which is even fucking funny.
Yeah.
But it was key. And I remember laughing with you all the way to the armory, like, I can't fucking believe they're not paying you. You're like, that fuck First Sergeant, he'll fix it. Don't matter, like, but you did. You ran those Marines through those gun drills and taught them all kinds of shit that even I didn't know at the time. And it's a good example of how they know when it came to it, you're actually there for it, even if it was bullshit.
Yeah, I love anything to do with war fighting, teaching somebody how to get better at the job of, either killing your enemy or keeping your Marines alive. Like, I love that part. The rest of it, I take it and go with it, but, it is what it is. And I felt, there were young Marines. We had some new ones coming in, and I could take them and fuck with them. Like, I like to fuck with people. And it was kind of like, straight up hazing, to be honest. But it was it was all in good, right? I mean, they didn't know it at the time, but I have a sick sense of humor, and you're learning something. I did take pride in teaching them stuff like that. But I also took pride in just trying to make them as calloused as possible. You make them or break them. I'm going to callous them up, or they're going to break, and I'm not going to have nothing to do with them because they're going to end up getting somebody killed or not being strong enough. But it was just fun to me, too. I'm not going to lie. It was just fun.
Well, I was trying to explain that to somebody recently, it's definitely what military men do, but it's what a lot of men do. You see it on construction sites, too, and you see it in sports.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to fuck with you in the social aspect, because if you're going to break now, you're going to be worthless when the pressure's on.
100%.
And I want to make sure I weed that part out right now, or build it up, or whatever we need to do. So if these terrible jokes or a little bit of physical hazing is too much for you, well, we're going to work on that.
Yeah, that was just part of who I was. Whether it was good or bad or indifferent, that's just how I was wired. I'm still kind of wired that way, but I try to tone it down as much as I can now. I do tone it down. Everybody thinks like I'm still the hostile. I'm like, you have no clue. You've been around back in the day. It's like this is a mild version of me.
Well, let's fast forward a little bit. I actually know how you got up to Ramadi because you were in my convoy. And I remember this specifically because I had a notebook and I had written down what vehicle numbers everybody was in and who the fuck I could count on, because I was the first vehicle in. I had Staff Sergeant Coleman's vehicle right behind me. Then there was 2 7-tons. Then it was your vehicle. And then Blake's vehicle was right behind yours.
I believe so. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, if shit hits the fan on this convoy, who do I need to, like, where can I find support? And I remember that being very important. Like, I wrote all that shit down.
I appreciate that.
Nothing against the line company dudes, but they were up 12 feet in the air up on the 7-ton. I believe they could shoot over the side, but as far as maneuvering, they were going to be trapped. And so I just was trying to make plans. What was your first impressions when we got up through the convoy and up to Ramadi?
It's hard to explain. Like, when you first get there, like, I was in awe. Like, as sick as it sounds, like I wanted to be there so bad. That's why I volunteered to be on the convoy to go. I remember Staff Sergeant Cook pull because I was volunteering for everything. He's like, why do you want to get up there earlier? I was like, I don't know. I just want to. I need to find a driver that's willing to go, and I want to be in that convoy. He's like, why don't you just leave it be? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I want to be there. I want to get there before the rest of the guys. Like, and I ended up finding Savage said he'll go with me. I couldn't have been more happier with that pick because the way I'm looking at it is like, if our truck breaks down, who you want working on it? Savage.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
Savage has a saw. Like, he's ready. He's got a lot of ammo and a saw with him. And I remember loading up with him with, we drank a warm case of Mountain Dews on the way up there. And I loved it. My first impressions were, it's kind of like, I don't know, like I was excited to be there, but at the same time, you're just looking and you're like, you're trying to figure everything out. As much as you think you're tough and as much as you think you're ready for a showdown like that, you really don't know.
Right.
You have no idea. So there's a little, like you're about halfway scared, about halfway, ready to rock and roll, but you're 100% clueless.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
So it was, it was, I felt like I was where I needed to be, but at the same time, I don't care how comfortable you think you're not 100% comfortable.
Right.
You don't know anything yet. So,
Well, then looking at the timeline, so I know a few things about where you were, but not everything. You'll have to fill in some of the details. But so we staged March 5th out in the middle of that desert. And then March 6th is when we went over on the first convoy. And it was us and Golf Company. Golf Company was the guys in the 7 tons. And it was specifically us 3 in this that are on this recording. So it makes it easy. And then it got real pretty quick. Your platoon was one of the first that had a significant casualty from an IED, and that was March 20th. There was the bike IED that hit Worth and wounded him enough that he had to be evac'd.
It took his eye, didn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. And then right after that was the first KIA that we had, and that was Lance Corporal Dang. He got killed from the RPG. And I know you were there for that part, so I'm interested in your take on what happened.
Yeah, that situation right there. There's things that happen that will just give you chills to like your bone. The Dane situation is definitely one of them. It's I don't know what day did you say it was, the 20th?
22nd was when Dang got hit. Yeah.
So here's what I know about that situation. It was at night. I know that we had got called for the QRF. We were rolling out there as fast as we can. We get out there. We knew something went down, and we were going to do basically like a rescue mission or just get a truck out of there or something like that, rescue the truck. And we get out there, and let's back it up. Even before we get out there, I get in trouble for slapping Lay Long in the face. Now, you understand, Lay Long is a corporal. I'm a lance corporal. So somebody walking by seen that. He didn't have a flashlight, so I had to let him have mine. So the little shit like that I took real serious. Like, you can do anything else, but when we're going on a mission, have your shit. Like, that was the stuff. So I slapped the hell out of him. Somebody walked by, outranked us. I told him to shut up. You can't tell a staff NCO that when you're a lance, but I did. I said, we're going on a mission. So we got out of there. So that's how it started. There was drama before we even left the gate, So we get out there, and as we get out there, all the lights in the city shut down. Like, it goes black. And then, so the flashlight thing comes into effect now, So I don't have mine because I dished it out to Dirty Steve. And that's that. So we knew we were going to have to go out there. We get out there. We see a truck. The truck that got hit got attacked. It was out there, and it was pretty destroyed, and we were going to have to tow it back in. And while we're hooking up and everything like that, all of a sudden the loudspeaker comes on. The mosque is blowing that loudspeaker, and they're chanting something, saying something. So I forgot who the interpreter was, but we asked him, like, what's going on? He goes, like, basically said they were calling for a jihad and calling for people to come out and, I guess, attack us in the streets or whatever. So we try to hurry up. We're getting out of there. When I get into the truck, the wheels are just torn apart. Like, they're both the front wheels are facing inboard, so you're not going to be able to tow this thing normally. Well, you can barely crawl into the truck because it had rolled and the top was crashed down, and windshield was smashed, and so I'm getting into the truck, and it's like I said, it's pitch dark. You can't see nothing. And so I had already given my flashlight up to lay along. So I didn't have one, but I had a camera that I believe it was Captain Harris, gave me, and to take video and get pictures of different events. And we kill somebody. Maybe we can identify somebody from that. But if not, if you don't have time to take, always gonna have time to stop and take pictures. So I had that camera, and this was 2004. So you don't have like the good kind of cameras that you can have. Like now, if I would have had my phone now, it would have been like amazing. You have a flashlight, all this.
Right. Yeah.
But on the camera that I had, so when I sit down in the truck, I can't see out the windshield. I'm like, I'm trying to rub it, but it's so dark, you can't see anything.
Yeah.
But I just know I'm rubbing this windshield, and I can't see something's on it. So I take out that issued camera that I have, and in order for the flash to come on, you had to actually take a picture. You couldn't just turn the flash on and leave it. You had to hit the button to take a picture, and then the flash comes on for about 3 or 4 seconds, and then takes the picture. I'm trying to see why I can't see out this windshield. So when I hit the camera to take the picture, the flash comes on, and all I see is this young man's brains all over the windshield. And it just immediately, I have this sick feeling in my stomach. And I can't explain it, but I was just in that moment, I got a picture of his brains all over the windshield, in the door, and, the teeth and the hair fragments. And I've never seen anything like that, but what hit me like a ton of bricks was, I remember thinking to myself, I said, somewhere thousands of miles away back home, there's a family, his family has no clue what I'm looking at. They have no idea the bad news that's coming their way. And I remember just thinking, like, I wonder what they're doing right now. And just imagining, like, what it's going to be like for them to hear that news. And I'm looking right at it. That's one of the few things that it's a feeling that I'll never be able to get rid of.
Yeah.
Even when they were writing the book, and Greg was, he had gotten in touch with me, and he had heard about that story, and he was asking me about it. And I told him the same thing, and he wanted me to send him pictures. I said, I have the pictures of it. He goes, can you send me the pictures? And I've never sent those pictures to anybody. I've showed people, a few people, Marines and stuff like that. But it's when I'm holding my camera, when I'm holding it, and I don't send it to nobody. And the reason I didn't want to send it to them is because I was thinking to myself, and I was right, if this guy posts this in the book, it's going to be something so horrible for his family to see. Nobody's seen those pictures other than when the few people that I showed, and it's on my phone now, but that was one of the things that was my first, like, holy crap. Other than McPherson getting his jaw blown off and things like that. But that was on that specific situation, that's one of the things that happened, getting in that truck. And I'll never forget that I'm thinking about it right now. Like, it just gives me a chill. And I still hurt for his family that day, just knowing something, their nightmare is about to come true. That news is coming down the pipeline. I'll never forget that. Even if I wanted to, I never could. But it's little things like that just make you so much more grateful for what we have now. I mean, but that was one of them. That was a big moment for me in that on that particular mission. And there's a lot of situations that happened in the course of that deployment, but that was like a hell of a wake up call.
Yeah, you mentioned McPherson. McPherson was March 13th, which was about 9 days prior, 9 days prior to that. And I imagine, I don't know, but I imagine you were friends with McPherson because I was.
I was great friends with McPherson because when I come to 2-4, I started off in golf company.
Ah, yeah.
I was in his platoon, and
Yeah.
he's a Texas boy. He was,
Yeah.
and so we, Texas boys always think, well, we know we're a little tougher than everybody and shit, but we always link up. You think, but
Yeah.
McPherson's one of the guys I love the most.
Yeah.
I mean, I love everybody, but there's some I love more than others. We ain't gonna deny that, right?
Right.
Yeah, that was a wake up call. McPherson's, jaw getting blown off, and then the next thing we run into heavy like that was for me it was the Dane situation. I just felt to this day it's a horrible feeling that I have when I think about that. Sitting in that truck by myself, seeing that, and then knowing like, wow, that was a crazy situation.
And so if I remember the story right, you ended up being the one that drove that truck back, right?
Well,
because
they towed it. I was inside the truck. I was the only one in the truck.
You were steering it because they towed it with a tow strap. Because I remember it coming back into the motor pool. Oh,
it came in. It was destroyed. Yeah, I was in that truck when they pulled it back.
That's a hell of a thing to ask of somebody to sit in somebody else's spot.
I don't think nobody even really knew. Like the people that had known exactly what had happened were already gone. So the QRF came out. We knew that was the truck. Yeah. We didn't know anything else.
Right.
Until I sat in it.
Right. Well, yeah, they had already scooped up and left as far as all that went. Yeah. Huh. All right.
It is what it is. No, it is what it is. I mean, it's a horrible war is hell. And that's part of it. So I had a real good, I think because it's like me going to combat, as sick as it seems, like that was always that was the goal for me. That was the goal. That's why I joined the Marines, only the Marines. It's what I felt like. You always feel like that's your purpose, that's your calling, even, if it's not. But I just felt like so my mentality was pretty, I was older than a lot of people. I was like 27, 28. I wasn't 19. So I felt like that was to my advantage. I feel like a situation similar to somebody not really prepared for that, it could really mess them up in the head just seeing that. So, but, is what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I think most infantry guys would understand exactly what you're saying because it's like training, I don't know. It's like sitting the bench on a football team forever and then never going to the Super Bowl or whatever, but then your team goes, right? Like that. Yeah. You always want to be the one that goes. You don't want to be the one that gets left behind. And we had that in Okinawa where we were all watching watching the invasion on TV. And that's I mean, it's a sentiment that I think would be shared by all of us, but you also don't know what you're asking till you get there.
You don't. That's why, the people that pray for war, I'm like, be careful what you say.
Right.
I think, I was the guy that prayed, if there's a war, please let me be a part of defending what I need to defend in fighting alongside but don't pray for a war.
Right.
I think it's something else in there too is you were saying it earlier, even Hodges, that, part of our training that especially that I think made 2-4 particularly well suited for Ramadi is that we hammered the get it done. Whatever needed to happen, you just do it. And you step into, it's not that you're mindless with what you're doing, but you don't think about it. And so as time went on and the war progressed, I think we put some systems in place that would maybe help prevent some of the things that we saw and had to do, like brought that down. But at the time, there was no other option. I mean, like, what else was there to do? Yeah. And if
you're in the fire, buddy.
Right. And if you started trying to negotiate, like, who was going to have to do it, or like, what's the best way to do this? Is like, no, fuck, we are in the middle of some shit. I don't know if you were asked to, or if you just, assuming and knowing you probably just jumped into it and was like, let's just go, guys, let's get out of here. Yeah. And we'll deal with it on the other side when everybody's safe.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you think long, you're thinking wrong in those situations. So Just, it is what it is. It's in front of you. Get it on. Do what you got to do and move on. Or the next one going to be laying there for somebody to come up and have to do the same thing. Is going to be them to you. So get up and move on.
Yeah. Do you remember? We kind of jumped directly to that first one, but prior to that, do you have any specific memories of any of the earlier missions, like trying to get your feet underneath you? How some of those felt, or are some of these the bigger QRF responses the first ones that you kind of remember?
It's the thing is it's so crazy for me because when you guys started doing these interviews, I'm listening. Even when I read the book, we went through so much stuff. Like I forgot about there's a lot of crazy stories. I'm like, holy shit, I forgot about that. It's like in a normal life, a normal person would be like, how in the hell could you forget about that? Right. Well, because we had about 45 other incidents worse than that. You know what I mean? So my dates and like my timelines, they're horrible. I can't remember. I can remember, different, like what went on in those situations, but like a lot of that, like I can't tell you what day that you're like, hey, this happened on this day. I'm like, awesome. Now I know. The book helps me with that. But I'm like, how in the hell does Nyla and Musk remember all these damn days? And then I go back. I'm like, well, because they're a lot smarter than me to begin with. So that has a lot to do with it. But
nope.
This is definitely fact. Y'all are smarter than me.
we just did our research, and I write very detailed notes. That's I learned a long time ago. If I don't write it down, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I don't really like to read or write. So there we go. But that was the first. Second, I'd probably say it was a second gut punch, other than McPherson first, but this one hit a different way, because it's wild. Imagine, I was literally trying to wipe the windshield clean, and it was just not knowing what was on there.
Yeah,
it's interesting that when we were talking about it at the time, people were trying to say, oh, the Battle of Ramadi. It probably kicked off, on the night of the 5th, right, when Morris got killed. That was probably the first thing. But realistically, this timeline's very short. Probably Dang was really the first group of insurgents that had come out from Fallujah and set up. They got Dang, and then Echo, not long, a couple days later, Echo killed those 4 guys with mortar gear in the back of their truck. Mm-hmm. And then the next day was when the Blackwater contractors got killed, or within a couple of days, maybe not the next day, but a couple of days. And that's when we started hearing the mosque go off to kill Americans. They were, it was in the middle of a night mission. We were searching a house, it ended up being nothing. And I know Rainmaker was there, and they were chanting, kill Americans and all that stuff. And the interpreter's like, we got to go. And it's like, we don't go. We stay.
We drive around and we do movement to contact. People are like, what does that mean? We drive around and wait for somebody to shoot us or blow us up so we can kill them. Otherwise, we're never going to find these people.
Yep. That's exactly right. Yep. And so right after that, really the next big things that come up is the command element got ambushed on April 1st, and that was with Sledgehammer. It was not with Rainmaker. And then again, on April 4th is pretty much when it started building. So basically they were starting to surround Fallujah for Operation Vigilant Resolve. You had the first armored calves surrounding Baghdad. And then we all woke up on April 6th and everything blew up for us at the same time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you say blew up, that's an understatement.
So the very first part of that, which I've heard a couple of interviews with at the time Colonel, now General Kennedy, their big plan was they had heard rumors that there was insurgents moving in. And so their big plan was to try to cut off the head of the snake and catch the Farhan brothers, and that was map 1 that went out. But
I got funny stuff.
I was gonna say you had a little bit of a part of that, so let's hear it.
I just know that he. I got to be careful here. He ended up in my truck, and and we were asking him some questions, and I thought for sure I would be able to get that guy to say something, because you can always get somebody to say something even if they're lying to you. But that guy was in the back of the truck, and he was hard as nails. He was like, you gotta respect, even though you want him to cut his throat right there, but you can't legally. There's a little bit about him that you have to respect, because he was true to the cause. He was not gonna say a word. He was stone faced. He was the real deal. So we get him in the back of the truck, and I forget even what day that is, but he won't say a word. As we're driving, though, I think we're in that neighborhood. We had him in the back of the truck when we had literally Humvees stacked with dead bodies. I have pictures of it. I mean, stacked with dead bodies. On the way out of that neighborhood, we get attacked again. So we got him in the back of the truck with some dead people and some other people that are on. We have another guy flexi cuffed. He's in the back of the Humvee laying down. As we're leaving, we're going, about as fast as one of them weighted down old Humvees could go, which isn't very fast, but fast enough to do this. As we started getting shot at, I yell at Calderon, everybody stop, hit the brakes. We hit the brakes, and one of the dudes that was flexi cuffed back there, one of the terrorists, I guess we'd call him, goes sliding to the front of the cab, hits his head, and breaks his neck, and dies like that. And we were just like, we were laughing. We're like, you got to be kidding me. That's something you're never going to see. You know what I mean? And then that happened. But the only time that Farhan said anything is when we had him laying down underneath Bowers' machine gun, 240. And when Bowers was getting on that thing, lighting it up, all that hot brass was coming down on Farhan right there. So that got him squealing, but he still wasn't talking about anything that we wanted him to talk about. But I'll never forget that. And we didn't really know at the time how big of a target that guy was. At least I didn't.
Yeah. He was in the deck of cards.
Yeah, he was. He was. So I'm like proud to say that guy was in my truck, and we were, getting him out of there. Map 1's is the one that got him, though, correct?
Yes. Yeah, they're the one that pulled him out of the house.
Yeah, and then so we were there for that right after, and then he was in the truck, and I just remember we had been moving taking the dead bodies and dropping them off at the IP shacks, the Iraqi police. But it got to the point where we were in these neighborhoods, and we realized these neighborhoods are not helping us. These Iraqi police are not helping us. So we said, to hell with it. And instead of taking them to the Iraq, we took them up there, and we dumped them off right in the middle of the road. Just stacking bodies in the middle, literally stacking bodies in the road. And before we got out of there. But that Farhan thing, that was a wild situation too. I mean, there was a lot of wild situations, but that was pretty crazy. So that's a good story to tell, a good war story, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, even your point about stacking the bodies, it just always brings me back to I have such a hard time believing the final numbers that they claim was a part of that first fight. It's so underrepresented, because I know.
Listen,
it's
you're 100%
insane.
right. You're 100% right. 100% right. There were bodies everywhere. I mean, we were scooping them up, leaving some. I've got pictures and video. So I know, I feel like those numbers were underrepresented. But there's a lot of times we would have, meetings, after action meetings, and go in there, and I'm like, dude, I forgot to tell them about, the people that Leylon killed. I forgot to tell them about the people that, Martinez shot up with the. So there's, a lot of that. When you go in, you need to be able to tell what really happened, you need a couple of days to process and tone down.
Right.
But it was hard to go over those stories, because we didn't get to do it till after the big, that big week in April happened. So you're like, That's like every one of those days was like a complete different lifetime.
Right.
Every day was like you could write a book about every one of those days.
Yeah.
And for you to go back and tell like the story of from the 5th or the 6th to the 10th, right? You know, at least that portion, it's hard. Your memory like does not like regain everything. Like you're in maybe a little bit of shock. I don't know. But like I said, there's a lot of stuff that happened that I have forgot about until somebody brings it up, and I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Dobb touched on it in his conversation. Just, you know, like it's hard to remember those crazy moments when literally every 5 seconds
It's a crazy moment.
It's a crazy ass moment. And so like you may or may not remember, you know, like you just I can't process every time somebody made a basket during a basketball game.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You know, like
exactly.
I remember some of the more wild ones and maybe a random one, but I mean, I don't, you know, it's kind of it's absolutely wild.
Yeah, I mean,
how the memory works.
It's what I remember. I forgot what day it was, of course, but we go somewhere, we get into a big firefight. We have to leave to go support somebody else. I believe it was Golf Company. On the way, so we're leaving one fight to go to another fight. On the way to that fight, I remember driving. Calderon was my driver, and I'm in the front seat, and I'm looking up the truck ahead of me. I remember seeing Fernandez. He had already got hit with an IED prior to that, so he was. You know, you get a little gun shy when you're in an unarmored truck. You know, like we had the old high backs. We had the plates that we stole from the army or whatever, but that wasn't nothing. That wasn't anything, you know.
No.
And on the way to the next fight, we're driving through Route Michigan, which that is the definition of hell back in 2004, was that road. And nothing, like, you know, it didn't seem right. Everybody was out. Everything was bad. And I just remember as we're driving through there, you know, we have our dispersion between the trucks, and because you're looking at anything, you're looking for somebody to peep out with an RPG and launch it at your truck, and you want to get dibs on them first. But there was this little girl standing there. She probably was about, I don't know, 9. And she was waving at all the trucks because we were hauling ass, and she was waving at all the trucks. And I don't know if they set the bomb off to hit my truck or if they set it off to hit the truck in front of me, because we're moving pretty quickly, so they got a moving target. It went off between us, between the two trucks. And I just remember looking in the direction of that little girl, and then the ID went off, and the ID was literally right behind her. And she just disappears. It made a mist out of her. Like, and you're going from one fight to another fight, and that happens in between. You don't have time to process that.
Nope.
You have none. You don't even want to think about it. I mean, you can't if you wanted to. If you get caught thinking about that, you're going to get killed wherever you're going because your mind's not in the game. So it was pretty wild. Pretty damn wild.
And that was one of the things that, you know, I brought it up a couple times on here, but I've thought about it more that we've talked about these stories. It was more indicative of that people were coming into the city that were not from the city because they did not have any consideration for the population.
For the kids. No, they didn't.
No.
They didn't. That's when you knew, like, this is a whole nother element coming in.
Yeah.
Like, they're willing to kill this unlimited amount of kids just to kill one of us.
Right.
So it's not the guys in that neighborhood that are setting these IEDs out, because they're not going to try to kill their own kids. I mean, we watch them beat the shit out of them and everything else, but that's a little different than lighting them up with IEDs, you know?
Yep.
Right.
Well, and that's at that point, they were still, that was the beginning of when they were kidnapping family members.
Yeah.
And they would then make them go, you know, shoot an RPG or bury an IED or whatever. That way they would get killed, and then that would create, you know, hopefully get the family to right.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a good recruiting technique. Make them go do something to the Americans, and when the Americans, you know, defend themselves, you kill their family members. So now they're going to want to do what? They want to be the next one that grabs a rifle or sets out an IED or an RPG and attacks you. So that's kind of a shitty situation, but it's what it was, man. I mean,
Well, you kind of jumped into talking about April 6th. I'm curious who all was in your truck and who was with you. I know you mentioned Calderon and
So Calvin, I had throughout the court, and like I said, I'm horrible with my dates and stuff.
that's all right.
So I had different members of my team, but and a lot of them, they never, like, you don't ever hear anything about them. But I promise you, the thing that I've become so impressed with after the fact of being home, and I didn't think about this when I was there. I thought about when I got home. I'm like, yeah, I was 27, I think 28 when all this was going on. There's a big difference between a 28-year-old and a 18, 19, 20-year-old. There really is.
Yes, sir.
I have been nothing but amazed by the way they reacted to everything. I know that I had Tebow, Akers, I had Martinez, Bowers was on my heavy gun. Calderon was my driver. I had Stickle and I had Leylon, old Dirty Steve. Those are the guys that I had throughout the course. And I'd like to give them all a big holler and just, I think I've told every one of them since the fact, but I have got nothing but the utmost love and respect for those guys doing it. I mean, some of them were teenagers. Like, some of those guys got there 2 weeks after they got in the fleet. Can you imagine that? Like, holy shit. I've got nothing but love and respect for them. But one of the most underrated guys in the entire platoon, in my one name that goes under the radar is Leylon. Dirty Steve was my right-hand man, and he was a savage killer. He killed a ton of people. God, I'm proud of that dude. I love that dude. But everybody that I had, solid as a rock. I mean, I don't know if they're afraid to get slapped upside the head sometimes or what, but man, they did a hell of a job. And the funny thing is, some of the people that I did slap upside the head and jump on physically before that deployment, they thanked me for it later. So don't think I was just being a bully because it was fun. I mean, they might have been lying to me, but they did tell me that. Leylon was one of them, by the way. But yeah, but that I had on the 6th, I know Stickle and Leylon, and I know Bowers was on my gun. I hate that I forget sometimes who was there, but all them names that I just mentioned to you, and probably a couple more that I'm gonna forget, but they were with me, and every time I asked them to do anything, they were right on the spot.
Nice. Well, I remember at least the lead up to the story that you just told with the guy sliding through the back of the high back. And the only reason why I remember that is because, so you guys had been in the south of the city reinforcing Gulf. And then you got hit by the IED that you just mentioned with the little girl on the way between that Gulf company reinforcement. You went up into the Sophia district, and that's where you reinforced my platoon, map 2. And that's when you guys slammed on the brakes and the guy broke his neck, because I remember that was one of the first things that somebody told me when I was like, what's going on? How many guys do you have with you? What's up? And also, why do you have so many people stacked in your trucks? And you're like, oh yeah. You're like, this guy just died, like throwing him out on the ground. I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. But anyway, it was like a huge force multiplier because my platoon was fairly short. We only had, I think, 21 or 22 guys on that day. And so you guys coming in was like, now we have 40 or 50 guns. We can actually move down this street. We had maybe moved, I don't know, 6-8 blocks, maybe a little further, but not significantly so. We had done plenty of damage, plenty of gunfighting, but we hadn't moved to our objective, which was to relieve the snipers that were pinned down up there in the north and the Echo Company guys. Do you remember much after you linked up with us and moved north and reinforce Echo?
Like I said, if you tell me a story or a situation that happened, I'll be able to jump in. But it's, like I said, it's so hard for me to put down the dates and times. I just know what happened when we got there, and I know what we did, Yeah. But I can't. It's hard. Like I said, I don't know. It's hard for me to remember the dates and times.
No, that's all right, man.
Well, I was just going to say, so I know part of what we had talked about ahead of time is that just wanting to make sure that you're giving some shout outs and stuff like that too. And just, is there during this time period, does any one of your guys that were in the truck, any specific stories that you wanted to shout out for that time frame?
Oh, actually, that's a good point. You have any stories of your guys doing anything?
I have, like I said, if I had everything that I told them to do, they didn't hesitate. They absolutely did it. I mean, I remember it was a funny incident. I don't even know if it was on this particular day, but do you remember how, because I think this was more towards the end of the deployment. Do you remember when they started, there was a lot of people from Africa coming in and they were black. And my 240 gunner at the time was Bowers, who's black. And I remember basically anybody we saw that was from Africa was black, you're like, keep an eye on them because they're not from here. And a lot of people were being told, a lot of people were being paid to come in. And I remember us getting into a pretty good fight. And I had to get out of the truck and I was pulling back concertina wire for Lieutenant Dobbin Riegelsberger to get through like wasn't an intersection, but it was a road. And it was, so I get out of my truck, I run up there and I grab the wire and I'm pulling it back. They go through and we hear some gunshots and I look back and I'm walking in front of the truck. Everybody else is still in the truck mounted. And so as they're driving off, I look back and Bowers is yelling at me. He called me Tex, Tex, because that was my call sign. And he's like, there's black people up there. You got to shoot at them. I'm looking at him. I'm like, I got a black dude on my truck telling me that I got to shoot at all these black. It was so funny to me but he was right. They were coming in from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But he was on point because I didn't know they were there. He probably ended up saving me just by telling me something like that, just letting me know that they were where. But that is one of the funniest things, just to remember, you got to shoot them, they're black. And I'm like, that just sounds so bad right now. Especially coming from him. But Bowers is another guy you don't hear a lot about. Man, that dude, he was solid on the gun. I loved having him in my truck. My guys never complained to me, and I was hard on them when it comes to stuff like that. I respect them so much more as I got older, even years after this deployment. Probably my respect grows for them each day. Each day I get older. I remember days. I mean, Leylon was on my hip like nobody's business, and I could tell Leylon, you're going to stand right here. As soon as that dude pops his head out, you're going to do your thing. And he wouldn't ask a question. He would just do it. Everything was like my teams that I had were all great.
Nice.
Awesome.
They were great. I'm sure there's a lot of things. I remember times Stickle having to lay down on a roof that was, I guess there was nothing but tar up there. And he kept telling me, Stickle was one of the guys you had to slap upside the head once a week or two because he did a great job, but he liked to question things on occasion. And I just was not in the mood to be questioned ever in that situation. And but I had him get up on a roof one day, and he's like, "But," I'm like, "Shut up, just get down. I don't want to hear what Sticko has to say." But he was up there laying in tar, hot tar at a 120-degree day, and he didn't bitch about it. But when he got off the roof, I'm like, "Dude, why didn't you say something to me?" He goes, "Well, I tried, but you told me to shut up." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's just random stories I could tell all day long about those guys, and how good they did for me and how good they did for everybody else in the platoon,
Yeah. Well, if you have some specific, we can keep going chronologically too, but if one pops into your head, man, just go ahead and tell it.
If it pops in my head, I'll tell you.
Nice. We'll go down that road.
Well, the next thing I have here in my notes is it was like the third official day of the Battle of Ramadi. So we had the 6th and the 7th, two big gunfighting days, basically where people were, mostly the line companies were taking QRF, and then our units were going in different directions to support them, and then we ended up clearing neighborhoods. The 8th was like a small cordon search. The 9th was some little stuff that was nothing, just small running skirmishes, but nothing big. There were some field hospitals found.
Yeah.
And then the intel stated that the majority of the insurgency had holed up in the Sofia district on the 10th. And that was when we did the first official.
Is that when? That's when I believe they got Lioness to our platoon, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So they ended up with me for some reason. A lot. Yeah. I don't know how they ended up. I was probably trying to, there were girls. Hey, you guys got to come to my gun. I don't know. But I remember some stories about. I heard you guys talking about the Lioness group a little bit, and yeah, they were definitely with us, and we got into one heavy fight with them right there with us, and it was kind of it was a big deal. It was something crazy for them to witness. And I remember, I get amped up and I'll say the word, I'll cuss, and I'll forget whose rank is what. And I don't care. And I remember, I don't know, she outranked me, obviously, because I was still Lance Corporal at the time. Something happened, and I said, I called one of them bitch. And not meaning it like in a female, you call guys, quit being a bitch, get over here and do this. You don't mean it like because you're a female. And I got so much respect for them after the fact, because in the heat of the moment, like, they understood. But when it was afterwards, I don't know, it might have been a staff sergeant. She come up to me, she's like, I just want you to know, you called me a bitch and I do outrank you. I was like, I totally apologize for that. And I just kind of was like, it had nothing to do with you being a woman. It just, I call everybody bitches, And, but I remember you guys talking about, but I was like, yeah, we had Lioness, and it was kind of crazy. Lieutenant Dobb called me and told me about this. He said, do you know that a historian said that it was the first time that's ever been documented of women being sent to the front line of you could probably word it better than me, but I was like, you gotta be shitting me. You mean they were with me of all people? That's probably the last thing they wanted to do.
So that particular moment, you had, I believe, just 2 women, correct? There were 4 total Lionesses, but
there were at least 2.
But you had 2 with Rainmaker.
Yeah, there might have been 2 only with us, but I remember, yeah.
So that particular day was the first time that they had been intentionally sent to a frontline unit into what was expected to be forward-facing combat. So much so that was it ended up being the subject of a review by Congress and testimony in front of Congress. And you guys got into a pretty rough gunfight.
We did. It was up close.
Yeah.
It was. So I'll give it to you, like, they seen some legit shit. They really did.
Yeah.
If you like what you've heard, this is a multi-part episode. Make sure you listen to the rest of the story.